She's too broken to love. Look at her, she's damaged goods, mentally unstable and bringing nothing into my son's life but debt and tragedy." My mother-in-law, Victoria Vance, barked into her lapel microphone, her voice echoing off the Grand Oak Ballroom's vaulted ceilings in Savannah, Georgia, freezing 73 high society wedding anniversary guests in total, stunned silence. Before I could swallow the knot of bitter humiliation rising in my throat, a tall, broad-shouldered man in a pristine Army service uniform with a gold tan beret tucked under his left shoulder strap stepped out from the shadow of the grand marble staircase. Master Sergeant Cole Vance, a 75th Ranger Regiment veteran, stood tall, his dark eyes locking onto Victoria with a look that chilled the humid Georgia air. "If Nora is too broken to love, Victoria," Cole said, his voice terrifyingly calm, cutting through the whispering room like a razor blade, "then perhaps you'd like to explain to the mayor, the district attorney, and the city's chief financial officer, sitting at table 2, why the trauma surgeon who saved your son's life in Kandahar is currently paying off your illegal gambling debts through a fraudulent power of attorney." If you want to experience stories where hidden truth always demands an absolute reckoning, hit that subscribe button right now, because what unraveled over the next 36 hours completely demolished everything I believed about my marriage, my late military service, and the man I shared a bed with. The silver dessert fork trembled in my hand, its weight feeling like lead as I stared across table 1 at my husband, Dr. Harrison Vance. We were supposed to be celebrating his parents' 30th anniversary. Instead, Victoria had spent the last 2 hours turning the evening into a public trial of my mental state. Ever since my honorable discharge as a combat trauma surgeon 2 years ago, following a shrapnel injury in Afghanistan that left me with a faded scar along my jaw and mild PTSD, Victoria had treated me like a dirty secret her family had to endure. "Harrison, say something," I whispered, leaning toward my husband, my fingernails digging into the palm of my hand. "She's lying about my medical records in front of your hospital's board members." Harrison didn't look at me. He adjusted his gold cufflinks I had never seen before, engraved with the initials CV, and took a slow, deliberate sip of his Cabernet. "Nora, please don't cause a scene," he murmured, his tone dripping with condescending pity that made my blood run cold. "Mother is just emotional tonight. Besides, your therapist did say your memory retention has been unreliable since the blast. You know you haven't been handling the medical bills well." "What medical bills?" I snapped, keeping my voice low as Victoria continued her speech at the podium, painting herself as a saintly matriarch forced to support a broken veteran. "My VA benefits cover 100% of my care, Harrison. Where is my monthly pension check going?" Harrison's eyes flickered with a sudden, sharp panic, but before he could answer, Victoria tapped her crystal glass with a silver spoon, her diamond ring catching the chandelier light. "Which is why tonight, Harrison and I have made the difficult decision to execute a legal guardianship over Nora's remaining disability trust, allowing us to manage her remaining disability trust for her own safety and well-being." A murmur rippled through the 73 guests. At table 2, Mayor Reynolds nodded in solemn approval, clearly believing Victoria's performance. That's when Master Sergeant Cole Vance, Harrison's older brother, a man who had cut ties with the family 6 years ago and hadn't been seen since my wedding, walked into the hall. He carried no gift, no champagne, only a weathered brown leather courier bag slapped across his chest. When Cole accused Victoria of fraud, Victoria's fake smile twitched, but she didn't lose her composure. She stepped away from the podium, gesturing for the 2 private security guards standing by the double doors. "Cole, you were disowned 6 years ago for conduct unbecoming of this family. You have no standing here. Guards, remove this man for disturbing a private event." "I wouldn't let them touch me if I were you, Victoria," Cole said softly, pulling a white wax-sealed military courier envelope from his bag and dropping it directly into the center of the head table's floral arrangement. That envelope contains the certified triage logs from the NSW 28th Combat Support Hospital in Bagram dated October 14, 2022, the night Captain Nora Miller, now Vance, operated on Harrison for 6 straight hours under direct mortar fire. I stared at Cole, my heart pounding against my ribs like a sledgehammer. "Cole, what are you talking about? Harrison wasn't injured in Bagram. He was at a medical conference in Atlanta." Cole looked at me, his eyes softening with a strange, heavy grief. "Harrison wasn't in Atlanta, Nora. He was in Kabul, working as a civilian medical contractor for a private security firm. He took a shrapnel burst to his femoral artery. You saved his life in that field hospital, Nora, but you don't remember it because 20 minutes later, a 107mm rocket hit the surgical bay, giving you a severe traumatic brain injury." My head began to throb, a high-pitched ringing filling my ears as the room seemed to tilt on its axis. "No, that's impossible. I met Harrison in Savannah a year later at a VA fundraiser. He told me he was a civilian surgeon who wanted to help me heal." "He met you at the VA fundraiser because his mother sent him there with a specific mission. He didn't come to heal you, Nora. He came to make sure you never recovered the memories of what happened in that field hospital, or what he stole from your tactical kit before you were medevaced." Harrison slammed his hands on the table, knocking his glass over. Red wine flooded the white silk cloth, spreading like blood. "Cole, shut your mouth. She's unstable. Look at her. She's hyperventilating. Security, take him down, now." The 2 security guards lunged forward, but Cole didn't even flinch. In one swift, fluid motion born of 20 years in special operations, he grabbed the wrist of the first guard, twisted his arm into a joint lock, and drove him face first into the carpet. The second guard froze, taking a step back, as Cole straightened his uniform tunic without breaking sweat. 82, Cole said, looking directly at Harrison. Harrison's face drained of every ounce of color. He staggered backward, his knees hitting his chair. What did you say?" "Serial number 82, Cole repeated, pulling a heavy brass key from his pocket, a key with a military tag stamped USSOCOM, property 082. The hard drive from the Bagram triage station was not destroyed in the blast. The perimeter team recovered it, and the digital signature used to transfer Nora's medical disability authority while she was in a medically induced coma matches the digital key assigned to your personal laptop. The air in the ballroom went utterly dead. 73 guests stared at the head table, the soft jazz music playing in the background sounding absurd against the suffocating tension. "Nora," Cole turned to me, holding out his hand. "Your mother-in-law's car is running out front. The trunk is open. If you want to know why your husband married you, you need to look inside before Victoria's lawyers destroy the original file." "Nora, you don't dare move," Victoria hissed, her voice dropping its aristocratic polish and revealing a raw, desperate rage. "I will have you committed to the state psychiatric facility before midnight. I have 3 doctors who will sign the order." I looked at Harrison. My hands were shaking, but my mind suddenly cleared with a terrifying crystal clarity. Harrison couldn't look me in the eye. He was staring down at his gold cufflinks, the ones engraved CV. "Whose initials are those, Harrison?" My voice barely a whisper, yet carrying across the silent table. Harrison swallowed hard, his throat dry. "Nora, please, we can talk about this at home." "Whose initials?" I screamed, the rage exploding out of me like a suppressed volcano. "They belong to Colonel Christopher Vance," Cole answered for him. My father, Victoria's late husband, the man who left a $5 million military life insurance policy that was legally tied to Nora's biological father, Master Sergeant David Miller, who died in the same unit in 2004. My breath caught in my throat. My father had died when I was 8 years old. I was told he died in a training accident in Fort Bragg. Without another word, I turned on my heel and walked out of the ballroom, my heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Cole followed closely behind me, his heavy boots steady and deliberate. We burst through the glass doors of the venue into the warm, humid Savannah night. Parked near the fountain was Victoria's black Mercedes sedan, its trunk gaping open under the streetlights. Inside the trunk sat a green military footlocker heavily scratched and sealed with a heavy brass padlock stamped 082. I reached into my purse, my fingers frantically searching through my keys until they hit the brass dog tag I had worn around my neck since my father died, a dog tag with a small, notched steel key attached to the ring. My father had given it to me when I was a child, telling me it was for his old toolbox. I slid the key into the padlock. It turned with a sharp, heavy click. I lifted the heavy wooden lid. Inside lay a stack of yellowed official Department of Defense records, a videotape marked Bagram Field Hospital, October 2022, and my father's original leather-bound field journal. I snatched the journal and flipped to the last page, dated September 12, 2004. If anything happens to me on this jump, Chris Vance has agreed to hold the unit survivor trust for my daughter Nora until she turns 30. But I don't trust Chris's wife, Victoria. She's heavily in debt to private loan sharks in Savannah. If Chris dies, Victoria will use Harrison to claim the trust by marrying Nora into the family before she realizes the money exists. My vision blurred with cold, blinding fury. The date of my father's death wasn't a training accident. Victoria's husband had covered up a combat equipment failure to protect his own promotion, and then used the survivor trust money to bail out his wife's debts. When I went to Afghanistan as a trauma surgeon, Harrison was sent to monitor me. And when I saved Harrison's life in Bagram, they used my head injury to rewrite my entire life. They didn't just manipulate you, Nora, Cole said, standing beside me in the dim streetlight. They used psychiatric medications prescribed by Harrison's colleague to keep your memory fragmented. Every time you started remembering Bagram, Harrison adjusted your dosage. A cold sweat broke out across my back. The small, white pills Harrison gave me every night with my glass of water. He called them recovery supplements. Suddenly, the blinding glare of headlights flooded the parking lot as a gray Lexus SUV screeched to a halt behind us, blocking the driveway. Harrison jumped out of the driver's side, his suit jacket gone, his tie loosened, his eyes wide with unhinged desperation. "Nora, put the locker down," he yelled, reaching into his coat pocket. "You don't understand what you're reading. That money belonged to my father's estate. Your dad signed it over to him before he died." "He didn't sign anything, Harrison," I said, my voice dead and emotionless as I held up my father's leather journal. "Your father stole my father's sacrifice, and then you stole my mind." "Give me the journal, Nora," Harrison shouted, stepping forward. Cole immediately stepped between us, his massive frame shielding me entirely. "Take one more step, Harrison, and I'll treat you like an enemy combatant on military property." "This isn't military property, Cole," Harrison sneered, pulling a small silver flash drive from his pocket. "And I don't need the journal. I have the master authority files right here. I'm her legal guardian under Georgia state law as of 4 o'clock this afternoon. The judge signed the temporary papers." "Which judge, Harrison?" a calm, authoritative female voice called out, near the venue entrance. A woman in a sharp navy suit stepped into the light, holding a thick folder. Behind her were 2 armed officers from the State Patrol, their red and blue emergency lights flashing silently against the moss-draped live oak trees. "District Attorney Karen Hayes," Cole said, acknowledging her with a slight nod. "Thank you for making it." Harrison froze, his face turning an ash-gray color under the streetlights. "Karen, what are you doing here? This is a private family matter." It ceased being a family matter when Sergeant Major Vance delivered a federal indictment package to my office 2 hours ago, Harrison, DA Hayes said, stepping forward as the state troopers moved in position. "The temporary guardianship papers you filed this afternoon were flagged for judicial fraud. The signature of Judge Thomas was forged." "That's impossible," Harrison panicked, taking a step back toward his vehicle. "Victoria handled the filing." "Victoria handles everything, doesn't she? Including the 3 offshore accounts in the Bahamas where your mother transferred $800,000 from Nora's disability trust over the last 18 months. I stepped out from behind Cole, holding my father's journal tightly against my chest. "Where is Victoria?" "She's currently being detained inside the ballroom by federal CID agents," DA Hayes replied. "It turns out military pension fraud involving a decorated combat veteran carries a mandatory federal sentence." Harrison backed away, looking around wildly like a trapped animal. "Nora, please, look at me. I loved you. I did care about you. My mother forced me into this. She threatened to ruin my medical career if I didn't help her recover Dad's debts." "You stood at that table tonight." I walked toward him until I was standing just feet away, looking into the eyes of the man I had trusted with my life. "You let your mother call me broken in front of 73 people. You gave me pills every night to erase my mind. You didn't love me, Harrison. You loved the protection my trauma bought you." "Nora, please!" "Troopers, execute the warrant," DA Hayes ordered sharply. The 2 state troopers closed in on Harrison. He tried to pull away, shouting for his mother, but they pinned him against the hood of his Lexus, forcing his hands behind his back and snapping the cold steel handcuffs onto his wrists. "Dr. Harrison Vance, you have the right to remain silent," the officer recited as they pulled him toward the patrol car. I didn't watch them put him in the back seat. I turned to Cole, who was looking down at the green footlocker in the trunk of the Mercedes. "Why did you come back, Cole?" I asked, wiping a stray tear from my cheek. "You were gone for 6 years. You could have stayed away from their toxicity forever." Cole looked at me, his face filled with an old, deep honor. "Because when I was hit in Fallujah in 2018, a young surgical resident refused to leave the triage tent while mortars were raining down on the LZ. She stayed and kept pressure on my wound until the medevac arrived. That resident was you, Nora. You saved my life long before you saved Harrison's. A ranger never leaves a comrade behind, especially not the one who gave him a second chance at life." My knees buckled slightly as the weight of my lost years, my stolen memories, and my buried strength finally washed over me. But Cole reached out, catching my arm and holding me steady until my feet found solid ground. "What do we do now?" I asked, looking toward the sparkling lights of the ballroom, where Victoria was currently being led out in handcuffs, surrounded by shocked guests. "Now," Cole said, pulling the videotape from the footlocker and handing it to me, "we take your medical records to a real military hospital. We get you off those drugs, and you take back every single thing that belongs to you." 24 hours later, I stood on the windy overlook of the Tybee Island lighthouse, watching the gray Atlantic waves crash against the shoreline. In my hand was my father's journal, its pages fluttering in the ocean breeze. The trial of Victoria and Harrison Vance would take months, but the truth was already done with them. The fraud charges, the forgery, and the military pension theft would destroy their social status, strip Harrison of his medical license, and ensure Victoria spent the rest of her life behind bars. I took the small white pill bottle Harrison had handed me every night for 2 years, opened the cap, and poured the contents out into the crashing ocean below, watching the wind sweep them away into nothingness. For 2 years, they made me believe I was shattered, confused, and dependent on their mercy. They tried to use my pain to make me quiet, and my trauma to make me weak. But trauma doesn't break a person who knows how to fight. It simply tests the steel underneath. When people try to convince you that you are too broken to be loved, too damaged to succeed, or too weak to stand on your own, remember this: they are not trying to help you heal. They are trying to keep you from realizing how powerful you become when you remember who you truly are. Stand in your truth, fight for your honor, and never let anyone who broke you tell you how to put yourself back together.